Santosh, we're just delighted you're here. So, well, welcome and introduce yourself and tell us about the exciting initiative you've led here in the state.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. So, uh, Governor Haley thought uh, Massachusetts should lead AI innovation, and so she started something called Innovate MA. So this is basically a partnership between government agencies and Northeastern, UMass Amherst, and other colleges to make sure students come in and understand the problems in the organizations and then create generative AI products for the organizations. So in this process, we were one of the first cohorts to participate in this Innovate MA, and I had a team of 12, and we were building generative AI products for 4 organizations, one of them being MassDOT. And then now I'm in MassDOT right now, currently working as a AI product manager there. So I'm working on other projects as well as the product I'm going to show you today, which is what you guys have already discussed, which is the employee chatbot. So let me share my screen first, and just give me a minute. Just
We're going to look away because I know how annoying it is to have a whole group look at you while you deal with technical issues.
yeah.
Well, here in Massachusetts, it's been very cold. It was 5 degrees this morning and I think 20 today, but we will have a white Christmas. We have not had a white Christmas in 5 years. So it's good to see.
That's nice.
No, yeah.
Here it's the opposite. It's very warm. I wanted to go skiing yesterday, but it was too warm. It's like 60 degrees outside.
I grew up in Ohio. My mom last year sent a bunch of pictures from when I was growing up. And like every Christmas, we had like 12 to 14 inches of snow. And
Wow.
it's, times are definitely changing here.
Definitely.
We can see your screen now.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, first coming to me, I just graduated from Northeastern. I finished my master's in engineering management and with a specialization in digital product development. Prior to that, I worked in Deloitte for a team called AI Garage, wherein we used to develop AI solutions for clients in US. One of the projects I worked in was predictive maintenance and fault detection. So let me not waste any time and jump into the showcase. So firstly, as you all know, MassDOT manages a vast network of like 9,500 miles of roadways and 5,000 bridges in one of the most busiest highway corridors in the country. So the engineers working on these projects must go through a myriad of fragmented documents and meticulously follow the set standard specifications, the design guidelines to ensure the utmost safety of the projects they're working on. However, navigating this documentation is not only time consuming, but also confusing. Most of the new hires, especially, often struggle to locate and identify the relevant information, frequently overlooking critical details. This is made worse by remote work as there is no immediate access to colleagues who can ask and clarify their doubts. So as a result, there is a frequent back and forth communication between the senior engineers and the junior engineers due to the oversights stemming from the juniors' lack of familiarity with all the systems. This inefficiency not only slows down the project workflows, but also places an additional burden on senior engineers. Recognizing this, we sought to streamline this process and minimize the repetitive interactions. So to address these inefficiencies, we developed HECA, Highway Engineer Knowledge.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Everett. We have not had one of Zoom bombs in months. So sorry. Not sure how that happens, but go ahead, Sanjeev. Santosh, sorry.
Yeah. So to address these inefficiencies, we developed HECA, Highway Engineer Knowledge Assistant. So it's basically a retrieval augmented generation chatbot tailored specifically for master documentation. HECA streamlines the document navigation process, provides engineers with instant information in a friendly chatbot interface. So basically, by using HECA, engineers can complete their designs more accurately, improve their understanding of project requirements, and dedicate the time saved to collaborate with senior engineers in the more strategic aspects of the project. So while tools like ChatGPT are restricted in MassDOT offices, we discovered that nearly 40% of the workforce uploads their documentation and all critical information into the ChatGPT to do all their tasks. This practice poses a critical risk as it may expose confidential client information into the external databases.
Santosh, excuse me for interrupting. Say that stat again. 40%. What did you
40%.
discover?
So nearly 40% of the workforce uploads documentation or whatever critical workforce information into the ChatGPT to either summarize or to do anything, basically the documentation and everything. So this exposes all the critical information into the web because ChatGPT is all public. We don't want all this information lying in some external database outside.
Right. So that was that shadow IT we were talking about earlier. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we thought, why don't we have our own LLM-based RAG chatbot trained on MassDOT's internal data, and that too it is operated within a sandbox environment, so that our data stays within MassDOT with strict data protocols. So let me not waste any more time and directly show you what HECA is. I hope you can see my screen.
We can.
Yeah. So yeah, HECA, as you know, is a RAG chatbot for MassDOT engineers. So let's play with it here. So first, initially, you can any MassDOT highway engineer can log into HECA with a single sign-on. So there is no additional process. All they have to do is click on the link, and it automatically logs in. If they're on their office laptops, if they're on their personal laptops, they can use single sign-on with their MassDOT email ID and log in. And we also provided sessions similar to ChatGPT because most engineers will be working on multiple projects. So they can have a different session for each of their projects, and they can always come back and start where they left off. So let me walk you through a small demonstration. So say I am an engineer and I wanted to know how to build a bridge. So I'll ask it, tell me how to build a bridge.
And Santosh, just to be really clear, these are state government engineer employees who are asking.
Yes.
This is not John Q. Public out on the internet.
No.
This is an internal application for employees, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take you through a workflow. This is a workflow an engineer did, and I really loved how he did it. So I basically copied those questions and I'm showcasing this right now. So yeah, so he started out with, tell me how to build a bridge. It gave all this answers. Then the engineer thought, okay, what if, let's play with the chatbot. Let's see how will it respond to this question. And he typed, what if there is a fish in the way?
Those darn fish.
So it directly goes into the environment section of the documentation that we provided and talks about what all environmental safety things that we have to take care of. And also it provides you with all the sources from where the documentation is you're getting the information from. So if I want more additional information, I can click on this document, it will take me to the documentation and I can read more about it. And we made sure with this documentation, not everyone should have access to all kinds of documentation. So says junior level engineers will get the answers, but they won't get access to the documentation. So whatever access restrictions are there in the SharePoint, those restrictions apply here too. So so anyone within the organization cannot access any documentation.
Oh, so that's really interesting. So let me say that again here. So the role-based access control that's in SharePoint today is also enforced in this chatbot
Yes.
in terms of the source documents it's pointed at. I guess that makes a lot of sense because it's pointing to
Yeah.
SharePoint documents, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's fine if they get some guidance on what to do with their projects, but we don't want to get them the entire documentation because it might have information which is not relevant for them.
Right.
Then he went on about asking Section 404 permit.
And Santosh, will this source the document it came from?
Yes.
Yeah.
So currently, the documentation is entirely all the documents that we have in the SharePoint. We created a separate entity for this and all the documents that the chatbot can access. So every answer it provides is from the documentation.
And Santosh, let me play back, make sure I'm listening correctly. So historically, we had all this knowledge in documents in SharePoint, but you had to go search through them and read them here. So
Yes.
this interface allows you to securely talk to documents. Second thing is here, we're telling our engineers, don't walk off into the open public and go to some Starbucks and ask someone this question that takes the average knowledge of all the internet in the public chat GPTs. Instead, take the same question and keep it inside the firewall, keep it inside the confounds of the State Department Mass DOT, where we know our knowledge here. It's already been codified in these documents here. Keep your query inside of this and have the answer come from this contained knowledge set. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One other question around that. Was the other problem that people would take a document from the SharePoint and then put it on ChatGPT in order to get summaries and something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that's avoid that problems. It's staying within the secure, responsible AI confounds within the trust environment of the IT. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the other part is that it seems like you guys are doing two things, which is kind of an interesting trick where you actually allow people to get the summary of the documents, whether or not you have access to it, but then you don't get the real document. But would you be told that you have the real, this is the real document, just in case you wanted to chase it down or get it from a friend or something like that? Or how does that work? Because then you'd get the list of.
So it will list the documentation. So if there is this document, it will list all the documentation which it got the information from. But if I don't have access to particular documentation, even if I click it, I won't be able to see it because it redirects me to the SharePoint, and I don't have access to SharePoint.
Okay, so this system in itself has complete access, whereas you have to go through SharePoint to get your actual access to the real documents. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And if I already have SharePoint access, I can always click here, then the document will open, and I can read through the documentation.
Wow.
Hey, Mike's got a question. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so you sort of answered it. So you're using a role-based access control mechanism?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question, excuse me, is if I'm using this, I'm assuming I'm a novice engineer or I just came on board and I'm learning this, so I don't know it yet. Is this ever used in my review at the end of the year? Hey, Michael, we noticed you used the chatbot X amount of times, not Y. Or can you use it to flag somebody who's having difficulty with this?
No, we are not currently doing that. So the reason we want them to use it is because currently we have a design review committee. So once a road design is done, it has to go to senior engineer and then to design review committee. And what we noticed is, especially between the senior and junior engineers, there has been a constant back and forth. Because say if there's a very big project which has say bridges, bicycle lane, guardrails, and everything, the junior engineer might not know about everything. And since he doesn't know, he won't search it in the SharePoint, and then he won't get an answer. But with this, what he can do is he can dump all this information, and then it will, because it's does semantic search for each of those words, it will give all the information that the engineers need. And what the engineers are doing is they're taking this requirements, putting it here, getting all the information, and then what they're doing is asking it to create a checklist. So they are asking HECA to give them a checklist so that they can have a checklist and make sure they take all the boxes before talking to the senior engineers.
That's really great. And Sanjay, let me try one other analogy, make sure I'm listening also correctly. This at one level feels like a smart librarian. I go into the library, I ask a question.
Yeah.
The library knows where to get the book, but say, Paul, book number 3, that's in the reserve section. You don't have permission to go there. Go talk to your manager, get that, but here's the other 2 books. Is that correct?
So it's not just librarian, it's also like a teacher. It will condense the information for you and give you the information.
Thank you.
And if you don't have access to particular documentation, it won't deny you information. If
Yeah.
it is pertinent to your project, it will give you the information, but it won't give you the access to the documentation.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, jump in, Mike.
So you did bring up something. You say you're using RAG. Who actually reviews this? Because RAG is not perfect.
Yeah.
So even if it's RAG, that doesn't mean I may find out, only build half the bridge. Don't worry about the second half till later.
So what we're doing is we have a team of 40 to 50 pilot users. These are all senior engineers and everyone who have been in MassDOT since 20 years. So we have given this tool to them and made sure they test it thoroughly. So the testing has been happening since 2 to 3 months. And not just that, so we are also using AWS. So what we're also doing is basically collecting some feedback, user feedback and data. So this is my account, so there's no feedback basically. So what we can do is, if there is something wrong in the answer, if it's perfect, then you just give a thumbs up. But if there is something wrong, you can select the topic. So this is basically documentation. PDDG is a certain document, SOP is a certain document. So you can select a topic, you can type what the problem is, and then enter the feedback. So in the backend, we'll have the question, the answer, and all these categories. So we'll go back and make sure, okay, what is missing, what we can do, how we can improve. So there are tools that can automate this process, but we are not relying on those tools because we want to make sure there's always human in the loop for this testing process.
That's great. And Santosh, can you talk a little more about the chat interface we're looking at now? Is this something you built, or is this an open source product, or where's this front end come from?
So this is something we have built. So this is this front end UI you see. This is being used for 4 agencies currently. So this front end we have built back in Northeastern, during March and April of the same year.
That's great. And then what models are you using in the back end?
There are 2-3 models for the answering Q&A part. It's Claude 3 Sonnet. The reason being we chose that is because particularly it has a very large context window, and for our use case with the huge documentation, it really helps us. And also Claude 3 Sonnet is superior in Q&A use cases. And as you can see, we also have sessions at the side. So to give the session titles and everything, we are using smaller LLMs like Mistral 7B and etc. I think it's a good time to jump into the architecture here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So AWS is not my choice. Basically, the government has a lot of tie-ups with AWS, so we had to use it. Yeah. So what EOTS? So first, EOTS comes into place. What EOTS is doing is it's creating sandbox for each of the government agencies. So MassDOT is the first one to have a sandbox, and with MassDOT, what we did is we wanted to separate each of our projects. So for each product, we have a separate sandbox. So sandbox. So take HECA. We have a HECA prod sandbox. We have HECA non-prod sandbox. And if we have coming with new projects, say project 2, we have a project 2 sandbox, project 2 environment, so that basically it's easier for us to debug, and also everything is clean and secure. So coming to architecture, so yeah, users access it in their desktop, and basically we are using the entire thing is hosted on Amazon CloudFront. And we are using Azure Active Directory with Cognito to basically validate them, authorize the users. So currently this Active Directory is where we have all the list of users who have access to HECA. So if you have access to HECA, then the Amazon Cognito will let you in and you can use the interface. Yeah, so basically the question passes through the API gateway and reaches Lambda. Lambda does multiple things. As you know, so Lambda has a trigger and then it does something else. So we have DynamoDB to store all the sessions for memory and everything so that the answers are contextually relevant. Amazon Bedrock is where all the large language models are managed. S3 buckets and SharePoint is where the data is coming from. So Kendra is basically a connector. It does all the indexing for us and everything. And most of the data is coming through SharePoint. Initially, we tried doing web scraping with so scraping the entire mass.gov website. But then there was a lot of trouble with that. People thought we are attacking the website and something. There was also a lot of load on the website. So we had to change our approach. And this really worked for us with SharePoint because of the role-based access and everything. It actually benefited us.
Yeah.
So we're also thinking of adding something like, if there is any particular data missing, or if there is any particular document that is very specific to your team, so you can add that file directly here. So it's currently in, we're building it. So basically you can add your files and it will go to the S3 bucket, and then the RAG will also use that documentation to provide you answers, but it will be only localized to your team. So that is something we have in concept and we want to release in the future. Yeah, but apart from that, this is the basic architecture. Yeah. So when a user asks a question, the question comes here. Based on the question, it does a similarity search. We get all the relevant documentation. We get the memory, and yeah, the LLM takes all that and then gives the response back.
So Chato, this is great. I've got 1,000 questions, but I want to let others have questions, or I can start drilling in mine. So Santosh, how do you think about veracity of answers here? So we've seen a lot of companies concerned about hallucinations, concerned about drift, concerned about, this is actually important work, building bridges here. We need to have the subject matter expert in the loop and everything. And now you've got this tool that's librarians just giving stuff out right and left to all the junior engineers. And is anyone checking it, or is that a concern at all? Or
luckily for us, being in government, the data drift is very minimal because the policies and documentation changes very like once in a decade. But we are making sure it's in check. So with Kendra, what we are doing is, so if there is any update in the documentation within SharePoint, say document 1 is updated with some new information. Yeah. So that information will be missing in the LLM's response. So what we are doing is we are doing a indexing. We have scheduled a daily indexing so that every night the new indexes are created. That way there is no data that is being missed.
And I think you said something important. I know 2 or 3 companies that did RAG against data, but then they found that they had like 5 versions of a document, some of which were old stuff, some of which are and it just got all mixed together here. And because it changes slowly, that minimizes some of that. And you guys are re-indexing, and maybe there's a date field or something on the source document. Is that correct?
So even while getting the documents back, one of the parameters is the last updated. So based on that has a lot of relevance in getting the documentation back. So if there is the same document with 2 last updated dates, so that is, one is very old, one is very latest. So we'll try to take the information from the latest data.
That's fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Within SharePoint, within SharePoint, what we're also trying to do is create an archives and making sure all the old data is moved into the archives. It's an ongoing process, obviously.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, I apologize. Someone in the chat had the same question I had. Carrie did. How do you measure the efficiency or the benefit of this over the old system?
Yeah.
What metrics do you use?
I'm glad you asked that question. So in my product management class, there was a guest speaker from IBM. So before she came in, I thought, okay, this question is coming to come up. So everyone is going to ask what is the use of this? So what I did is I asked my team to go to every engineer, make sure you give them a certain set of questions, manually measure. Okay, what is the time they're taking with SharePoint? What is the time they're taking with this? So yeah, this is the answer. So what we understood is earlier, if they're taking 1 hour of time, they can finish it in 15 minutes right now, because the documentation and everything is the majority of the work is basically finding the information and then documentation. As you know, LLMs are good with documentation, and also with RAG and everything, it's easier to find the information. So yeah, there's approximately like 75 to 78% efficiency increase.
Can we hover on this a little bit? I'd love to get John Fiocla's comment on here. So, this is because the skeptical CFS says, prove to me you save money. And here we're saying no one's getting fired here. What we're saying is these highly educated, high dollar knowledge workers are claiming 78% of the more time by
Yes.
removing drudgery work. And they prefer this new robot widget called HECA. So we think that's going to allow them to do more backlog or more safety or other things, but it's
or as simple as taking that extra coffee break, going to that lunch networking events. So yeah, it also adds to the work-life balance thing.
Right. And when you just said there, what I hear is employee NPS. This is going to include and higher satisfied employees, which means we have longer retention, we're better able to attract higher talent people, we have a better culture here. So Mr. Skeptical CFO, that's how you justify this budget here.
So
These
Paul,
are
I
all
have
the
a great
engineer
idea.
testimonials.
Paul, let's write a Forbes article on this, because I think this is really key.
Which part, Mike? The
savings, something about using robots. I don't know, I read it somewhere, but you and I can write a Forbes article on this and publish it this week, because I think that might be an idea. What do you think?
Happy to, Mike. Love to collaborate. Yeah. Mike, John, kick in here. What is this the right way to think about return for the skeptical CFO, or what else are we missing?
Well, I think the anytime you automate anything, it creates a surplus. And there's 3 places that surplus can go. It can go to the investor in a higher return. It can go to the customer in a cheaper price for the product, or it can go to the labor in higher wages. And I think, I believe that generative AI is the beginning of a whole new management paradigm, because a core part of management is the discovery of and the transfer of productive knowledge. And that's what these things do. And it's also decreasing unproductive activity, which this also helps with. And so I think if you want a once and done improvement, sure, fire people, because you can do it with less labor. If you want an ongoing capability that can make your organization better and better and better, I would say share some of the slack and the economic return with the labor, because that's going to attract more labor, give them time to invest in creating better organizations. And I think that's actually going to be the road of the more competitive organizations. Now, in government, it's a whole nother thing, right? Do you start giving it back to, tax move people around?
So adding to that, what I've found out by talking to the engineers is earlier, when they had to go to the senior engineers, and if there is something they are missing, they have to come back and go back again. They were facing some confident issues. So with this, they're more confident on approaching their senior officials.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And John, and then to be real tactical, when you say share back with the labor, what I'm hearing in this particular example is sharing back that time, Santosh, just do something, more coffee breaks, that network a little more, to be a little more thoughtful, to build relationships. So it's not like they're getting higher wages, but they're getting more minutes to do higher stuff for developing relationships and knowledge, which adds to satisfaction and retention.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David. Thank you for raising your hand.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I used to work for the government, and one of the challenges is a lot of the knowledge is hidden in people's emails. Somebody's saving a spreadsheet from 5 years ago. So is there any way to get that tribal knowledge that might be in a current or former employee's email from 2 years ago?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have not thought about it. Yeah, but that's definitely something to look into. Yeah.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Santosh. This is a fascinating project. So the reason why I asked is I'm actually a science teacher. I teach high school students. So right now at the high school level, and from our end, we're actually very hesitant to get the kids to play around with ChatGPT. So I would love to hear from the panel and also you is how do I, as a science teacher, to prep the kids for the workforce? Because to tell the truth, I'm sweating. Like if we're moving to digital, if we're doing ChatGPT, then what is the labor force? Like, what are we teaching? What are we training our kids? Because right now the education we're in the 19th century industrial revolution education program right now. So what is it that we need to move to prepare our Gen Z, right, for that new workforce? Because this is really scary to me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So with GPT, sorry, John,
sorry.
you can go ahead.
Yeah, Carrie, I'll put a thing in here. I think educators have to teach kids how to use these things individually. I think they need to teach kids how to build these things, at least at the group level, how to build these things and then deploy them. I think the responsibility of educators now will be to help individuals create the tutors and the robots that they're going to take forward in their lives, and as a community share them. I have a short TED talk I did on Socrates at scale, and I think that we know that tutoring is much better, and if we create the right social system, we can get the students and the faculty together to create robots to help them learn and then to take them forward. So I understand that. I think you should be, I don't know, so much scared as really thinking things through on the fundamental level, because the old model of 1 to 30 classroom, I think, will not survive. And I think this is a very, very important problem for our citizenry, and we have to start thinking about how we improve the public good and the literacy of how to use these things.
Great. I see David's raising his hand, actually raising his hand. Go ahead,
Yeah,
David.
thank you. Yeah, Carrie, I do math tutoring among other things, and I just wanted to share one perspective. They're absolutely, the ChatGPT is absolutely amazing. The idea of not having students use it, this is my personal feeling, is wrong on so many levels. However, they can hallucinate about very simple math and science things, like really badly. And I think that one of the roles I see for this is to teach students how to assess the sanity of answers. Does the answer make sense? And that's a skill that goes well beyond ChatGPT, meaning you should analyze whether anything you hear in the political realm or from other teachers makes sense. And so I think it's a broadly useful skill, but the idea of not using the LLM, I think is, excuse me, I'm being a little bit whatever, is completely crazy. They're amazing, but you have to learn the skill of saying, if I look at it this way and this way and this way, do they all align? And if they don't, you have to recognize it's hallucinating.
That's great. I want to wrap up in a couple of minutes because it's a holiday thing here. Santosh, a really, really great project. Congratulations to you and the
Thank
thing.
you.
Get one last question. I want to open up the open mic, maybe one question here. What are the two biggest lessons you learned that you'd want to share to the community for the next person that's doing the same thing you're doing in the state of New York or a different state or similar thing? What's the two biggest, put four wheels on the car. Don't forget the brakes.
Yeah, so this is going to sound generic, but it's important to talk to the end users, because not with this, but with another example, we were also building a similar chatbot for MBTA. But this was basically, I'm pretty sure you all know the ride. It's a paratransit service. So basically, a lot of people had a lot of questions: how to book it? Can I get my dog with me and everything? So initially, while we were creating we created a similar chatbot, and it was supposed to be used by the users. And then when I talked to them, they were like, see, we are already confused with a lot of information. I don't want another chatbot in front of me. I don't want to ask more questions. All I want to do is call someone, and if they can answer all my questions, that is good. So that is when we realized, okay, the chatbot is not supposed to be for the end users here. It's supposed to be for the call center people, so that they can, when they get the questions, they can type it and get the answers quickly, and then give it back to them.
That's really great. Thank you. So, Santosh, thank you so much. Congratulations. I know it's a holiday week and it took a while to get scheduled, but really impressive. And, you know, I continue to be so impressed with what Governor Healy has done in so many different levels. We're really fortunate to have her here in Massachusetts as a governor, and Yvonne Howe and Tom Schneider and everyone else. So thank you for sharing. Let's open up last 1 minute. Open mic is questions people want to ask, or things they want to share, or venting, or
I have a question to Santosh, I apologize. Can I ask like how long this project took to build and how many people worked on it?
So yeah, this MassDOT one specifically. So basically, the thought was we were a group of 12 people, and we had 4 to 5 agencies. So the thought was 2 to 3 people will work on each agency. So, but then what I thought is that's very inefficient because there is a lot of commonalities between everything. So it's 12 people. I divided the people into like people who build front end, people who are working on back end, and people who are working on the cloud. So that really helped us. So the timeline is basically 2 months of research, 2 months of actually building the project, 2 months of all the government audits, getting approvals from EOTs. And then and then MassDOT hired me. So basically, again, once MassDOT hired, getting all the processes and everything. Yeah, the product basically was built in 2 months. Rest everything was basically all the processes, compliance, and everything.
So it's 2 months, 12 people?
Yes.
Thank you.
But I think one thing you said that was really important, though. I mean, this is a build project. So the problem was identified. You found a team and happened to be Northeastern students that are outside the organization. It built up the validation of the real users. Oh my God, we built it. And thank God they hired you on. So now you can take some of that transfer information and keep that project going, right? Because if all those 12 went away.
Yeah.
So
the 4 agencies we have built the projects for, all the 3 are shelved. This is the only thing that's in production because the other agencies were hesitant to do it.
Yes.
And yeah.
So really, really congratulations again on thank you for sharing. It's really great.